Hi, this is Walking and Talking Spirituality, and today I'm thinking about Paul's letter to the Philippians. In particular, I'm thinking about verse 1:27 as I try to make sense of our world and my thinking about the role that we as Christians can play. And it's interesting, 127 is essentially the main teaching point that Paul makes to the Philippians. And the Philippians were in an interesting position. You may know the background of the Philippi, but it was heavily ex-military. It was in the provinces, but it was an imperial city, which meant that there was a high percentage of persons in Philippi who were actually Roman citizens, which was unusual outside of actually Rome and in Italy. And so the people in Philippi had a great deal of status because they can appeal to their citizenship. They gave them certain protections regarding taxation policies. They had a right to appeal to the emperor if they got into a legal dispute. So it was very, very highly sought after to have the status of a Roman citizen. Now, what's interesting, and you don't see this in most English translations. In 127, Paul says, only this is my translation, be citizens worthy of the gospel. A lot of translations just say live a life worthy of the gospel, but underneath that word there is a word that only shows up here in Paul. It's this play off the word citizenship, and it's interesting later. And this is a framing construction. 3:20, Paul will also say our citizenship is in heaven. So Paul is trying to frame an ethic, a missional positioning, if you will, for the Philippians that uses the metaphor of citizenship, but essentially subverts it. Because when Paul talks about citizenship, he's going to model what that looks like. And in chapters, basically from chapter 2 through chapter 3, verse 21, Paul's going to give 3 examples of what a citizen worthy of the gospel looks like, and most profoundly. And first of all, Paul uses Jesus as the model. And the Christ hymn in Philippians chapter 2 is probably familiar to many of us as we read, if you've read the New Testament. But it's the text where it says, although he was in the form of God, he didn't consider equality with God something to be exploited for his own good, but made himself nothing. And this is the profound part, taking on the form of a servant. And that word there, servant, that's kind of a sanitized version. It's really slave. So here's Jesus, and he takes on the status of a slave. He becomes a human. So the divine becomes human, takes on the slave status. And then in that Christ hymn, and it says, he was obedient unto death, even death on a cross. I mean, we all know Jesus died on a cross, but sometimes we miss the power dimension and how profound of a scandal that would have been. Because again, Paul's writing to Philippians, people who live in Philippi, many of whom are Roman citizens. And if you were a Roman citizen, you could be executed for a crime, but you would never be crucified. Crucifixion was limited only to rebels against Rome and or slaves. So think about it. Paul subverts citizenship by saying, look, be like Jesus. So what's the word here? Again, I could say a lot more. But I think Philippians has a powerful lesson. I know it does for me. Simply this. The status I embrace for myself will set the limits on my capacity to reach others with the gospel. Say that for you also. The status you embrace will set the limits on your capacity to reach others with the gospel. We don't quite have the same honor-shame culture that the biblical period did. But notice what Jesus did. Even though he was God, he would have been at the top of the ladder. Jesus went all the way to the bottom and took on the status of slaves. Because when you renounce status by actually simply identifying with the lowest rung, that's the ultimate power. That's the power of faith, hope, and love. So friends, as we try to navigate these really difficult times right now, what status are you going to embrace? And are you willing to put real skin in the game on that? It's a question I'm asking myself. Thanks for taking a walk with me. The status we embrace sets the limits of our capacity to reach others with the gospel. Only do this one thing: be citizens worthy of the gospel. Till next time, live by faith, be known by love, and be voices of hope to others. Amen.